On March 24th, 2019, I released the video Devil May Cry 4 The Underdog, where I stated that Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition was my favorite DMC game and possibly my favorite hack and slash game. And at the time of recording this, just a couple weeks ago on September 11th, 2019, I stated that DMC Devil May Cry is not just the worst DMC game, but just a bad game in general. And now here we are once again with the most recent installment in the series, Devil May Cry 5. I honestly didn't think that we'd be here for the third time within a year span talking about the same series. But I want to just cut the foreplay and just jump right in. But before we can get into the nitty gritty, I want to clarify that this video will be a lot more thorough than my usual stuff. Think the Toradora video, but for a 12-ish hour game. So, get comfy guys, it's gonna be a long one. And now that that's out of the way, let's rock, baby. Get it? I said the thing! I said the thing Dante says, am I cool yet? I feel like we should start with combat first because that's mostly what you're going to be doing in this game. The best way to describe Devil May Cry 5's combat is just fluid. In earlier titles, Dante was just a tad bit too slow, and the combat was a little on the bulky side. Now, this didn't stop it from having depth or fun factor, but they were still working out the kinks on how to make a well fleshed out combat system for Devil May Cry. The first game established the rules, but was very rough in certain spots, particularly the style rankings and the continue system. DMC2 was just busted from the ground up. DMC3 was the closest the original trilogy got to a perfect game, but even then, certain choices like choosing one style at the beginning of the level, and only being able to hold 2 weapons held the game back. Sure, some may believe that these setbacks makes the player feel like they have to be a little bit more strategic, but no. I believe it just holds the player back from doing all these crazy fucking weapon switches you can do mid-combo in the later games. DMC4 was, as far as I know, the most fleshed out DMC combat system. Combo videos of even the base game are absolutely mind-blowing to watch, but lack of enemy variety and boss repetition made it to where the player can't really use that system to its true potential. DMC was alright. I like the weapons, but color-coded enemies is a absolutely fucking terrible idea, and the enemy design, as well as the rest of the game, was just well below average. However, Devil May Cry 5 makes it to where the combat system and all of its intricacies are easy to grasp for newcomers to the franchise, while also keeping standards of the series, such as taunts and the classic pause combo. And now it's time to move on to individual gameplay, starting off with Nero. While I criticize Nero's combat in DMC4 Special Edition, in DMC5 Nero feels way more fleshed out. But nothing too big was changed except for one obvious thing that I'll get to in a second. Nero still only uses his Red Queen and Blue Rose, the latter of which can now hold 3 charged shots to use in combat. And the former is still just a regular sword, so using Exceed is still your best bet for variety when it comes to combat. But back to that big change. Due to story reasons, Nero now has no Devil Arm, so to replace that, he uses Devil Breakers, all of which have a different use from powering up your attacks to slowing down time. And they even have different special attacks that do end up breaking the arm. The arms will break a lot, especially if you spam your attacks during combat, but you're able to find extras in various missions, and buying more isn't that big of a deal because red orbs can be found by the fucking boatload. This new system, as well as the alterations to Nero's base combat, is what made me want to play as him. Lack of options was the only thing keeping me from enjoying his sections of DMC4's campaign over Dante's. And now, with him undeniably being the protagonist of this story, it's fitting for his combat to be so fucking great to use. Now on to everybody's favorite malnourished emo boy. While the different gameplay style for V is interesting in concept, in practice, it's essentially just button mashing. Of course, there's managing Griffin and Panther's health, keeping V away from enemy attacks, reading poetry to up your DP gauge, using V for enemy takedowns, as well as combo upgrades for all 3 demons. And while that sounds like a lot, it's really not. This is simultaneous praise and slight criticism towards V's playstyle. It's extremely different, and is a breath of fresh air from the intense combat of our other 2 protagonists. But you can pretty much spam square and triangle interchangeably until you summon Nightmare to fuck everyone's shit up. Of course, there's pause combos and holding square and triangle to do other attacks and yada yada yada, which really isn't a good option for normies like me where you can essentially just spam and get the same fucking outcome, if not better. Let's just say, there's a reason why I always got S ranks on missions with V. It's still fun, but very, very, very easy to cheese in your favor. And Dante. Fuck. Just fuck. The sheer amount of shit they give you to play with is overwhelming. If you aren't good with Dante by the end of your first playthrough, don't feel bad. It took up until my second playthrough to find a method to his madness. I didn't think that he would, but he may just blow Dante from DMC4 out of the water. Out of the gate, you get 2 weapons and 2 firearms. Standard shit. But by the end of the game, you get about 8 new weapons and firearms collectively. What the fuck? That is 12 combat options. Sure, some of those are upgrades from previous weapons from earlier in the game, but that's a lot. And of course, there's the style system that I'm still not good at to this day. I main Swordmaster, use Gunslinger for a few extra hits, and spam Trickster to avoid combat. Using Royal Guard only gets my shit fucked up. Oh, and one final note, I love how Dante is pretty much just a shonen protagonist, so he just gets crazier and crazier as these games go on. Fucking satisfying. Anyways, now that we're done with playable characters, let's move on to other gameplay shenanigans. Devil May Cry 5 does something that I initially wasn't too keen on before the game launched. This entry removes purchasing consumable items like green orbs and purple orbs from divinity statues as a whole. Yeah, you can still find some out and about in the missions. But when it comes to replenishment, they've been replaced by gold orbs and red orbs that you can now spend to be revived right then and there. Now, while this sounds interesting, the part that made me nervous was the fact that you could purchase both of these on the PlayStation Store with real money. And I've explained in both of my DMC videos that Capcom has done some fucky shit here and there just to get a quick extra buck. So I was automatically skeptical of the use of this system. But honestly, it works great in action. Gold orbs can be found in every mission, so purchasing them with red orbs is a bit of a last resort or a safety precaution. And red orbs can be found literally everywhere, and missions give you thousands and thousands upon completion. So purchasing those is a last resort, which makes me pretty happy. It's not pressured onto the player, but it's there as an option. But I didn't like the monetization of the EX color costumes. Except for V and Virgil, the only way to obtain these costumes is to either pre-order the game or pay for them. In 4 Special Edition, they did the same with just Lady and Trish's alternate costumes, which begs the question, why didn't you just include it in the first place? But this time around, they did it with pretty much everybody's, including Nico, who isn't even a playable character. Thought that was pretty fucking scummy, but you win some, you lose some. It's time to move on to the story. Devil May Cry 5 undeniably has my favorite story in the series. It ties every single game back together in some way and pays off certain moments that I was honestly worried would fall flat. The idea that DMC games have bad stories is wrong. Now, they may be cheesy and have bad dialogue here and there, but the actual concepts, character development, and use of ludonarrative in these games is fucking spectacular. But this time around, it feels like the team used that 11-year gap to come up with a story that was well worth the wait. Dante, Nero, and the rest of the cast are recruited by this guy V, who claims that there is a new Demon King, here to fuck up the human world, and the core of his demon tree is in Redgrave City. So everybody runs in to stop him, only for them to fail. Yeah, that's new. Dante, Lady, and Trish are left in the Qlipoth tree, leaving Nero, V, and newcomer Nico to save the day. And that's just the opening of the game. If you haven't played this game, please leave. It is your last fucking chance. I've done my best to sell this game to you without spoilers. Just go buy a copy, rent it for a day or two, or just fucking steal it. Go experience DMC5 with your own eyes, please. Because we are now delving into spoilers. Okay, are they gone? Are they gone? Cool.
Resistant, wait! Back up! Come on! Let go! We must leave here! It's far stronger than we ever could have imagined! Bastard told me dead weight! Dead weight! Dead weight!
Any nervousness I had about Nero becoming a mainstay in this franchise is completely gone just by seeing the opening of this game. His arc about needing strength mirrors his father's, which also ties back into his development in DMC4. Speaking of which, the moment where Nero finds out that Virgil is, in fact, his father, and Dante knew this the whole time, was just fucking great. Part of me was a little worried that they'd never acknowledge the lineage like a certain other franchise I know. Also, lots of games would have made Nero agree with Dante and believe that they have to stop Virgil together. But no, they made Nero say fuck you to that and says that they're both wrong. Dante has both seen his brother fall into hell and killed his brother with his own hands. So killing him once again, while he doesn't like it, is territory he has treaded before. I personally believe that Dante sees it as almost a twisted destiny of sorts. And Virgil is just a fucking nutcase as usual with a tunnel vision on power and this dumb sibling rivalry. And Nero is just tired of this sibling bullshit. So tired in fact that he bitch slaps his uncle and kicks the ever-living shit out of his father in the best final boss fight ever. I thought Ansem and KH1 could never be beat. I was very wrong. All in all, from his development as Virgil's son and Dante's nephew, to his dynamic with characters like Nico and V, Nero is definitely a greatly written character, and I wouldn't mind if he took over the series as the new protagonist. Dante gets a lot of development when it comes to his relationship with his brother. He's getting older, he's getting more tired of the bullshit. He's not pumped to kick the shit out of his brother like he was in DMC3. It's very obvious that seeing Virgil pretty much die twice, with one being by his own hand, has fucked up Dante. He's not the focus of the narrative, but that didn't stop the team at Capcom from fleshing out our favorite Demon Slayer even more. Virgil himself doesn't get too much screen time, but this game definitely gives a lot of characterization to this once one-note character. And don't take that the wrong way, Virgil in DMC3 is a great rival and a well-written character, but most of his character was just gaining power and kicking Dante's ass. But now we finally have a game post DMC1 with Virgil in it. Well, well-written Virgil. And like I said with Dante, Malay Island fucked everybody up. This man went into hell to murder the demon who massacred his parents, only to be enslaved by that same demon, and then slain by his own brother. At the end of Devil May Cry 5, when I realized that V's demons were just bosses from Devil May Cry 1, I was absolutely fucking blown away by how well Itsuno, Bingo Morihashi, and the rest of the team tied all these games back into the semi-finale. Just that one scene of Virgil looking back on his and Dante's childhood before the final battles is just so fucking good. Same with him giving Nero the poetry book he's had since his childhood. It's just astounding. I'm sorry that I have to keep coming up with new adjectives to praise this game, but it's just that well made. However, when it comes to V, I have just one question, and that is, was V evil? I assume he was an antagonist in retrospect because his entire mission was to collide with Urizen to become Virgil again. But throughout his time in the game, V is nothing but a calmer Virgil if you let go of his power complex. So maybe his hatred and anger is just all in Urizen. But Urizen has no recollection of his time as Virgil. And then there's that scene where V gets angry at Dante, obviously showing that certain aspects of Virgil, including his rivalry with Dante, are still in V. Does Virgil retain his memories from when he was V? If that's so, then why would he all of a sudden become such a dick to his son when they had such a great dynamic for most of the game? What the actual fuck is happening? I don't hate this twist or anything, it's actually one of the most interesting narrative choices in the whole franchise. I just feel like there should have been one or two scenes acknowledging these questions and elaborating on the story. I thought the idea of Virgil and Nero having father-son bonding time through the form of V was pretty interesting, but that's also never really acknowledged by the story. Again, Devil May Cry 5 probably has my favorite story out of the entire series, but there's just little things that hold it back from perfection in the narrative department, and not giving enough time to certain concepts is my biggest gripe. Specifically, the character of V, his relationship to the rest of the cast, and Dante's flashback to his mother. Just one or two more flashbacks sprinkled throughout the game would have been great, and maybe towards the end the game could reveal that the person having these flashbacks was V, thus naturally revealing his identity instead of giving two info dump scenes of him revealing who he is to two separate characters. Okay, and the last thing that I want to touch on is the idea of this being the end of the franchise. Itsuno came out and said that this was the end of the Sons of Sparta saga, and some believe that this could lead to a whole new cast, and I'm not sure that I'd like that. Devil May Cry is Dante, Virgil, and now Nero, so to just up and alter the entire cast just to keep the series going doesn't sound like a good idea in the slightest. Even a game focused on Trish, Lady, and Nero set after 5 sounds great, but I keep going back and forth on if I even really want that. There was an 11-year gap in between DMC4 and DMC5. Sure, 4 Special Edition came out during that time, but that's over a decade to refine and perfect a game. And as a finale, it works. It ties up all the different sects of the franchises, from the anime to Dante's original work-in-progress name, and even the reboot fans. Its combat is addicting, visuals are amazing, bosses are fun and challenging, and its story is beyond great. And while I'd love to see a DMC6 with the return of the entire cast as the main playable characters, there's one fear that I have about that: creative fatigue. Creative fatigue is something that I truly worry about, especially in video games. A creative director can make game after game after game back to back for decades of their life, and that shit just sounds exhausting. Now, let me make this very clear before I continue. Hideaki Itsuno, as far as I know, has not claimed that he is exhausted of Devil May Cry or that he doesn't want to make them anymore. This is all just speculation on my part. And Devil May Cry has had breaks in between installments, resulting in 6 main serious games in the span of 15 years if you count the special edition. But Itsuno has worked on countless games on top of this already long series, and I fear for him getting exhausted of DMC. And if you want an example of this exact situation, just look at Hideo Kojima. Of course, he's made lots of titles, most notably PT, Police Knots, and the upcoming Death Stranding. But he's most well known for the one, the only, Metal Gear. The man spent almost 30 years creating games for this franchise. It was one of Konami's flagship series. But it was clear that he was becoming exhausted of it all. Pretty much every Metal Gear installment post MGS3, Kojima would always say that he's done with making installments for the franchise, that X game was the last he'll make. And the fanbase? Let's just say that there was very much a divide in the MGS fanbase, and that probably didn't help. Kojima was either an overrated hack, or he was the best writing in gaming. He was praised for Metal Gear, he was hated for Metal Gear, and that gets fucking exhausting, I'm sure. He cared about the fanbase and his art, but blind fandom and hatred doesn't take any of that into account. Creators like Hideo Kojima, Masahiro Sakurai, and Hideaki Itsuno are people dedicated to their art. They will spend years working on their respective franchises and will endure the bullshit from various companies and even their own fans just for the sake of creating great art for the people who like them. Just look at how DMC2 was handled. Some random director made DMC2, but approximately 4 months before shipping, Itsuno was appointed director and was told to try and fix it. And I don't care if you're fucking Picasso, you cannot remake a game from ground up in 4 fucking months. But regardless of all this, it was still shipped with Itsuno's name as director. Again, scummy shit. Now, do I think they're perfect? No. Do I think that they deserve to be treated like actual people and have their creative integrity as well as their humanity taken into account? Yeah, I guess. All of this babbling is just me trying to say is that if Itsuno was trying a way to exit the series and avoid a fallout similar to Kojima's with Konami regarding Metal Gear Solid 5, this game was the way to do it. It's very obvious that the team learned their mistakes from their past installments and they poured their heart and soul into this installment. And it's because of that Devil May Cry 5 truly is a masterpiece. And that's about all I had to say. Like I said, today's video was very different. It was a lot more in-depth and thorough as opposed to saying my usual thing good or thing bad. Sorry I got a little more pessimistic towards the end, but I really had a blast playing this game, and I had a lot of fun working on this video. I hope you enjoyed watching. Have a good night, everyone. I'll see you next time. Oh wait, I almost forgot. Jackpot.